illicit financial flows were being led by international organizations, and the Pan-African perspective and Pan-African voices to keeping illicit financial flows were missing. So as a result of that gap that was seen, then the 6 initially Pan-African social organization convened to launch what was called the Stop the Bleeding campaign, meeting with that desire to create a political buy-in in terms of the implementation of the findings. And it takes me to the second point of the conversation that I'm supposed to have with you. There are many findings in that report, but I just want to zero on 3 quick issues that should contain us, and also that will be seized us in the conversations that we have had, I think yesterday, and even today, and also driving what the driving force behind the Pan-African Conference on illicit financial flows and taxation that is being led by Texas Network Africa. Number 1, it is the realization that when it comes to the bleeding of resources from the continent, far from the narrative that political actors and local actors are responsible, multinational corporations were singled out for being the main culprits when it comes to the siphoning of resources from the continent. And it somewhat resonates to some of the discussions, I think, that have been that I have heard from this meeting. So what it means is that there was that estimate of about 65% when it comes to illicit financial flows emanating from commercial transactions. And if you also to look at the European Commission report, which also speaks about the extractives company being responsible for 60% of tax fraud in Africa. So you need to understand also that this becomes the second point of the findings of the report, that the epicenter when it comes to resource leakages from Africa is the extractive sector. So when we talk about wage evasion, issues that we are seized with right now, the ecological debt, climate change, all that is linked with agri-producing, it's also connected and consistent with their behavior when it comes to making sure that they don't pay a fair share when it comes also to enhancing domestic capacity, the domestic revenue mobilizing capabilities of our government. The third interesting issue from that is that, which brings me to the whole conversation, why Africa seems to be always behind the race when it comes to sustainable development. We are now pushed into debt. We are now pushed into foreign direct investment. We are now pushed into official development assistance, which comes with conditionalities, as well as the debt as well. But what we learn from the what is called as the Becker report, I'm not saying this because I'm in South Africa, but that is how your former leader is esteemed in Africa, is that what we have or what we are losing through illicit financial flows is enough to cover debt that the continent owes. Is enough to wipe out that debt component. Is enough to it's more than what we gain through official development assistance. It's more than what comes in terms of foreign direct investment. And if you are to take this and tie it up with the UNCTAD report, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development report that was produced last year, tackling illicit financial flows for sustainable development in Africa. They came up again with a huge figure of about 88.6 billion being lost annually through illicit financial flows. And you can see from the trend, from the Beck report, 50 billion to 88.6 billion, that the ballooning effect is nearly doubled, but some figures are even higher than that. But the question is not about the figures. But what you also take note from that report is that if only the leakage of resources can be plugged, we will have the finance gap of sustainable development in Africa. So just to look at the transformational effect, the impact this can have in terms of making sure that Africa can stand on its own feet when it comes to determining or provision of the basic services, your health, education that most of the African people are denied. So I think those points are very, very important. Then my third point I wanted to bring to this conversation is what's in it for us, right? I want to give you
opportunity to send our bank account.
Definitely. Can I give you all my WhatsApp number? Thanks for that. So it's important to realize that, like in the case of Zimbabwe, we have Zimbabweans that are here in South Africa. They are toiling, working very hard. Of course, there are some who are damaged by criminal activities, but let's focus on the good and the majority. Equally so in the diaspora, in the UK, people work really hard. They send the money back home. And when that money comes, last year we were talking about $5 billion US. That money is then used to pay for education, either a relative that is sick, about cancer, BP, and so on. So you can see in a way that citizens are paying taxes, one. Two, they are subsidizing government by providing extended care and services. And you can go on to say unpaid work in some instances when it comes to women. But basically from the income that even personally that I earn, I'm not looking at myself and my immediate family, but I have to look at the extended family system. That's how most Africans operate. In a way, we are subsidizing them. The area that we may have sometimes is about in a family, why is so and so much helping me out? And we misdirect our aim. Because most of the help that we are giving is a subsidy to government. Ideally, it should be government, we should be on the front line when it comes to provision of those basic services. So this is why it is important at individual level. I'm raising this this analogy or conversation to ensure that we don't get dislocated each time when we talk about tax taxes. It's not an abstract, it's something that we are confronted on day-to-day basis. Ordinarily, you should have, when you talk about your basic access to health education, to say the primary portal, the primary call or center should be a public service. But in our case, it's hard given most African cases again. Maybe in South Africa, but you can see also the fact that you are taking that it might not be guaranteed from the conversation that I have had now. So you can see why it is important to locate this. So my fourth point now is about what is happening here and trying to make a case for the relevance of the Stop the Bleeding campaign. And let me give you some energy. Sometimes when you are in a race, you feel like there's no finish line. Why do I have to keep running, and why do I have to push even harder? Because you give your all. And let me tell you something, there's a lot of inspiration that has come from alternative information and development, alternative information and development center. So this year, the first week of October, in Zimbabwe, for instance, the alternative mining in Dara that has been taking place for 10 years, for the first years on their agenda, these are some of the wins that may be unintended based on your part, but I think they are important for you to take note of. For the first time in 10 years, the alternative mining in Dara in Zimbabwe had an agenda that included wage invasion. All along, it was all about right. Then secondly, tied to that, I've been the International Trade Union Confederation Africa is part of the steering committee of the Stop the Bleeding campaign. And Jaco would know we've been trying to jumpstart what is happening in South Africa, to use it to jumpstart the campaign in Africa on wage invasion in tax taxes. And rightly so, because South Africa also is the powerhouse when it comes to mining, not only in terms of the output or economic contribution, but in terms of the capital emission, that the transmission of capital, mining capital to including other goods and services to Africa. So you can see how interconnected this is. And we are now aiming to ensure that as part of the campaign, the issues to do with wage inflation, particularly in the extractive sector, are going to be something that we are going to prioritize in regional, sub-regional, and in different parts of African countries. So just know that we drive inspiration and energy, not only from the above, but from the bottom. So take note of that. So we are also listeners. We are also learners. We are not coming here to say there is a campaign that is happening up there. It's not happening up there. The campaign is an aggregate of it's an aggregation of efforts that are happening at the individual country level, and then you upscale them to SADC, take your ECOWAS in East Africa, and then going forward. So as I conclude, I think it is important that we don't look at things in silence. I think that is if we look at the conversation that happened this morning, when you talk about the ecological debt, when you talk about climate change, when you talk about wage inflation, when you talk about tax evasion, anything that you look at is a developmental factor, even security, the unrest that's happening, instability in South Africa, anywhere else, even lack of democratic space, violence, conflict in Mozambique, you only have to locate it in somehow that they are beneficiaries of resources. And these resources will make sure that as long as chaos prevails and if they can get and maximize what they have, it's all good for them. And they don't take responsibility. So why I'm just foregrounding this conversation that it's very, very important, like the conversation that we're having this morning, to ensure that we don't stylize the conversation. We are very open-minded. So that is precisely what the Stop the campaign is all about. We need allies to work with closely at country level, and I can't go any better than the illustration that I made, and the inspiration also that we are getting from this alternative information and development center. So I normally want to say three things in a funny way. So can you spell charm and write charm on your papers? Say that again. Charm, charm. It's CHARM. Can you just write it down? Right. And also, can you write paint? Paint, P-A-I-N-T. P-A-I-N-T. Like I for Iraq. All right. Right. So the economic charm of Africa. You look at your charm that should propel development in Africa. That still is blocked by creating corporates. In the end, what we have is the harm. People talk about resources. This is not the case to have resources. This is purely a charm that we have, which we should use to propel our development. But because of some acts of greedy corporates and also misguided leadership that we have at political level and other levels again in society, they block that sea, and in the end, what we get is the harm. And then people talk about the source case. Then again, what we are told about, if you block your P there, you get aid. Most of the people, I'm not sure about South Africa, but most of the Africans that are interacting, particularly South Africans, they are saying, if only we can have a good rapport with America, even if someone is saying, I met Trump during the election, we spoke with them and they assured us that we are going to get money. You understand? Aid is a narrative. We need to have good relationships with the West to get aid. But if you look at it that way, what we need is for that narrative start with the capital P for what is ours. you need a fair share. It could be labor, it could be tax, it could be about ecological data and everything else. So don't talk about aid to Africa. Start with the capital P. Let Africa be paid fairly. So that's important again to be able to underscore. Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know how everybody else is feeling, but I'm ready to sign up for, Stop the Bleeding campaign. When are we marching? I'm ready. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. But yeah, I think what was important there, that wealth moved from the south to the north. Not how we've been taught that wealth moves from the north to the south, right? That is clear. That illicit financial flows in particular are critical for our development, was one of the messages that is very evident there. When we talk about maximizing domestic resource mobilization, how illicit financial flows factor into that, but also how it's personal. I think it's very important that we do not talk in the abstract that Mukasiri has already raised. There are people here who are from unions. When you go back to the people, how are you connecting this idea that seems so abstract? Multinationals, how are we using the narrative to ensure that people see it in their own lives, a personalized narrative? So I think that was very important. And Champagne, I think I'm going to be remembering that for a very long time. I'm going to now hand over to Dick to give us the next presentation on tackling profit shifting from the ground up.
No, I said to Dominic when he spoke about interest for time that I only want to emphasize and kind of like make a repetition of what we were discussing yesterday, just so it sticks really. And it's the reason that this text we have. So I just that this just sticks in memory now, and that every trade unionist, because I'm speaking particularly to trade unionists and members in negotiation delegation of wage schemes and so on. So one thing, and when the comrade from Dick speaks about wage evasion and so on. So you remember we have seen several charts of how sort of these multinational companies are organized. So you typically have a kind of a so-called organogram of different legal entities like this. And then here there can be finance companies, can be holding companies and so on. And then sometimes you have a mine like that. Or this is a mine and so on. And we said that when you are in wage negotiation, or if you are in negotiations about retention, like these 189 negotiations, or when also communities are struggling to implement social labor plans, which in South Africa the mining companies are obliged to have, and it's a legal obligation to fulfill this social labor plan. But we know what the reality is. But nevertheless, it is a legal obligation. It is not the Longmin or the Anglo Gold or the like this company at the top, the mother company. They are not the ones who are formally and legally employing the workers. The one, even if it says something else on the payslip, that's more like on the payslip, it's more like a brand name or something. It is the local subsidiaries, those who are actually the mines. And I think when it comes to Sibanda, for example, I showed you an organogram of about 20 different squares. And only kind of 5, 6 of them are actually mines. So you have the Driefontein mine, you have something called the I don't remember the name now, the Kruger mine, something like that. They are the ones who are employing the workers. They are also the ones who are paying the taxes to South African Revenue Service, which is something that dawned on us when we were looking at Longmin's subsidiaries, Western Platinum Limited and Eastern Platinum. We realized it was You have this notion that it's lonely paying taxes. No. It's the local subsidiaries that are employing people and that are paying the salaries and that are obliged to pay taxes. And it's also in these subsidies where all the mistransfer pricing or all the schemes and the forgery and so on, or the misvaluation of the, this was one example. Here you have the Canadian company, for some reason have the same name as one of London's all subsidiaries. I think there's some bad mood in the This is a Canadian company, and here is the mine. Here is the mine. Barclays Mining Limited. This is just a holding company to that. Here is the partner and so on. Here you have also in another sort of geographical location, another company. But it is when it comes to these kind of schemes where you profit shift, you shift the profit to other countries, to tax havens or to a bank account in Dubai and so on. It is in the financial statements here you must look. So when you have wage negotiation at some angle, the unions should ask, is it necessary to have a sales commission of 9% on the revenue and sending that money to Dubai? We think that you should sell the chrome here from South Africa. Can't it be signed for by people here at the office and they can sit here with 3 laptops and sell the chrome? Why do you have to send it to Dubai and pay 9% commission to Dubai for this? That is the question. It's a wage bargaining question. It's a wage bargaining question. It is a wage bargaining question. And you should, I said before, you should tattoo this in on your left arm. And if you forget it, you should look there. And you should raise this issue in these situations. Yeah, that's basically the whole presentation. What can I say more? You have to, in order to build really a movement of workers against profit shifting, you have to anchor this in the consciousness of the membership as a whole, in the consciousness of the union negotiators. If you see a diagram with kind of 81 different squares in an annual report, you must suspect, as a rule, the companies will shift profits into other countries, into other jurisdictions. And they will do it with the wrong prices, with loan agreements and whatever. I mean, and Sonita is speaking even about illegal ways to do this and so on. But you have to look at the related party transactions, the selling and buying of things that doesn't exist between the daughter companies of the multinational company. And you do that with the power, you try to use the power of the Labor Relations Act, where it says that the union had the right to ask for relevant information when they are negotiating about retrenchment or when they are negotiating about wages. And then you look at the financial statement, and if the comrades are not comfortable enough to read these financial statements, there are many progressive economists and so on who can interpret these financial statements for their active comment on the ground. And eventually also the trade unions will be able to do this themselves. It's not that damn difficult. It's not rocket science. Okay. You have to read the documents. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, now I will hand to you. Thank you for that. We clearly have a lot to learn ourselves as, even as progressive economists. We're looking at this, and I'm not sure I can do this mathematics here. So I think I might need a one-on-one training myself, but it's something we can teach to many people so that we can all do this, depending on the transparency of information, which was raised earlier. Do we have access to the information to do this? It's also something we have to think about. But I'm going to pass it to Yaku to give us a couple more comments.
Thank you. So, unfortunately, time has kind of gone away from us a little bit. But I just want to come in on that point of access to information. Dick said that one of the ways that unions can access the annual financial statements and this kind of information is through provisions in the Labour Relations Act. But, and according to yesterday, I apologize for repeating myself, but oftentimes those kind of requests are frustrated or ignored. But there's just been draft amendments to the Companies Act published, and these amendments really open up the way for corporate transparency and for access to these annual financial statements. There's really three main changes that I just want to mention for the benefit of those who are joining us today. The first is that the Companies Act now will require companies to keep a register of their shareholders and submit that to the CIPC, but they'll also need to keep a register of those who have beneficial interest in those shares, which now includes a definition of someone who's the ultimate beneficial owner. So companies won't be able to kind of hide behind, these complex corporate structures won't really be able to hide behind holding companies and trusts in the same way that they have been before, because now they'll have to disclose who the actual living human being is at the end of that chain of ownership. And in taking these things forward and investigating these kind of activities, that's going to be a very valuable tool when that goes through. The second change is that companies above a certain size are going to have to file their annual returns to the CIPC, which include the annual financial statements, this register of shareholders, and the register of those with beneficial interest, including the ultimate beneficial owners. And then these records will be made publicly available to anyone through the CIPC website. So once this goes through, wherever you need to go through the Labour Relations Act or file a request, you can just request this directly from the CIPC. And this is going to really unblock a lot of obstacles that are on the way of taking this up at the border strength as a part of wage bargaining processes and to enable this kind of roundup fight against profit shifting. That was a bit of a crash course presentation, but I won't really have time for discussion, so I'll leave it there. I hope that's covered the main points.
Thank you, Yaku. Thank you for that. And really, I think we've all heard a lot of discussions over the last day or two. Some were there yesterday. But fundamentally, the question is where to from here. And so in this part of the program, I'm going to open the floor to